very much. First of all, I have to apologize. I think I'm going to infringe on the Trade Descriptions Act because I mean that I'm not really up to addressing the title head on. It's too vast. It requires a lot of new research because of changes that have taken place. I'm going to sketch these, and I certainly can't do it myself, both because I don't like writing solo. I prefer collaborative writing. Most of what serious stuff I've written is collaborative, one or two exceptions, and also because I've been out of the country for too long to actually be sensitive to the nuances. I know the sort of broad outlines. What I'm going to talk about eventually is an issue that is a part of the general title, but a rather special part which has a direct political and, I would say, theoretical importance, and on which I've recently co-written an article that appeared this year in Race and Class. And this is a sort of identity politics that have recently been promoted by certain people, and I want to, in fact, argue against it. But first of all, the background for the work that needs to be done. In 1971, there was an article published by three people, one of whom is me, three comrades of Matspenden, The Class Nature of Israel. Some of you may have seen it. Surprisingly, it was very widely read and was in some sense successful. It was a very simple article. It just put forward a description, really, and some analysis of what Israeli society is like. A combination of capitalist society and a very specific form of settler state. It was very broadly read on the left. I was in Chicago, speaking at a meeting of a left-wing group there. And they were, first of all, they all had read it, I mean, the older members, and they were pushing me for a sequel, which is exactly what is needed, for reasons I understand. Moreover, it was also, surprisingly to us, it was also listed in the reading list of the sociology department of Israeli universities. And apparently it was a great innovation there. I mean, we were not aware of this, simply because it was an attempt to give a theoretical framework for what Israeli society is. And of course, the general framework, the general genus is a settler state. Now, the Israeli sociologists had addressed Israeli society in a very empiricist way, but without actually putting it in any theoretical framework. And here there was an attempt, and sort of, although it was not an academic article at all, it was a Marxist political, it was published in New Left Review in 1971. Okay, so that was an attempt. And of course what is needed is an update of this, a new analysis, because there have been changes. I will sketch the changes that occurred since then. Another important article that is less well known but ought to be is by another Matspenden comrade, Farjun, which appeared in 1980 in the journal of revolutionary socialists of the Middle East called Hamsin, which no longer appears. It is accessible. I mean, you can get it. I think it's available on the net, and that was the Palestinian workers in Israel, Reserve Army of Labor, and that was published, as I say, in 1980. At the time, there was a sort of process of almost convergence of the Israeli model of colonization, which is a working model, or according to Kautsky's classification, I would say expulsive or exclusivist model of colonization, a convergence towards the exploitative type, which is more like South Africa. What it consisted in was a big influx of Palestinian Arab labor from the occupied territories into Israel, which reached, according to some estimates, probably 300,000. The present population of Israel is 7.5 million people, of whom 20% are Arab, Palestinian Arabs who are citizens of Israel, as distinct from the population of the West Bank and Gaza. But in 1980 it was much less. That was before the massive immigration from the former Soviet Union, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So that there seemed to be a process of convergence of the Israeli type of settler state to something more, not nearly as extreme as the South African model, but some approaching that kind of thing. Well, one of the changes that have occurred since then is that this has been reversed. Zionism has reverted after a fairly short period in the history of Zionist colonization, from the early 70s till 1987. You can pinpoint the change exactly to 1987. That was the outbreak of the first Intifada. With the first Intifada, Israel applied a policy of closure, which means making it very difficult for Palestinian workers from the occupied territories to get employed, to cross into Israel and be employed, reverting more, almost to the pure Zionist pattern, except that instead of these Palestinian workers, this Palestinian labor force being replaced by Israeli Jewish working people, there's huge import of migrant labor from all over the place. There are, for example, in Israel now about 20,000 Chinese workers in conditions of near slavery. But workers from all over the world, depending on whatever sector they are employed. It is estimated that there are something like 300,000 migrant workers in Israel in very harsh conditions, super exploited. One of the comrades whom I've been listed to do together with me the updating is actually working with migrant workers and is very, very familiar with this situation. The other one is Farjun, who wrote the article, as I mentioned before, on the Palestinian Reserve Army of Labor. Now remember, this 300,000, you have to multiply it almost by 10 to scale it to Britain, because the population of Israel, as I said, is 7.5 million. So it would be like, say, between 2.5 or to 3 million migrant workers, not immigrant, but migrant workers working in sort of substandard, not like Polish plumbers who are EU citizens and who are protected by EU legislation, but more like some African or Albanian workers that are